As we continue this conversation about can we coexist, discussing Christianity and the other world religions, today we're going to be talking about Buddhism, which was founded in the 6th century BC, very old religion, founded by Siddhartha Gautama, who is the original Buddha. And he was born to a rich and privileged family his parents received a prophecy about him, said that he would either become a great warrior or he would become a revered holy man. And they didn't want him to become the holy man. So instead, they kept him in the palace and trained him for war, for combat, to become this great warrior. One day, when he exited the palace walls, he experienced something that opened his eyes to the grim realities of life. The first thing he saw was a sick man. He witnessed the reality of suffering and pain in the world that he had been sheltered from his entire life. Second thing he saw was an old man who was approaching death, and he'd never seen or experienced or witnessed death before. And the third thing he saw was a dead man. He saw a funeral procession. And in the midst of that, the fourth thing he saw was a holy man. He saw a monk, a priest, meditating, that in the midst of so much suffering that he was experiencing and seeing for the first time in his life, he saw this priest meditating with this blissful and peaceful smile on his face. And that is where he rejected the warrior prophecy and sought to live a life of peace and pursuing enlightenment. And he forsook everything that he had in order to pursue wisdom, to pursue enlightenment, like that monk who he saw on that fateful day. And so over the course of his life, he developed these four noble truths that really make up the foundation of Buddhism, of what does it mean to be a Buddhist. And these in various forms still are very much present in our world today throughout the different branches of Buddhism. And so we're going to be talking about some of the different forms of Buddhism in our next video. But the first of those noble truths is that all of life is suffering. That when we look around in our world, there's a lot of pain and there's a lot of suffering. And that all of life is suffering. The second noble truth then is that suffering is caused by desire, that it's our desires for the things in life, for people, for ourselves, that brings about suffering, because the third noble truth is that if you eliminate desire, then you eliminate suffering. So if if I'm not craving and desiring health, or I'm not craving and desiring to make it onto the football team or to that great college or for the scholarship, when I get sick or when I don't get those things, then I don't suffer like I would if I really craved and desired them. So the third noble truth then is, if you eliminate desire, then you eliminate suffering. The fourth noble truth has to do with how do you eliminate desire, and that is through the Eightfold Path. That the Eightfold Path is the way to eliminate and to reduce desire and then suffering in your life. And we can talk about that in our next video too. And so as Christians, how do we evaluate and think about the four noble truths and what Buddhism has to say? We look at it and we say, hey, we agree that there is an awful lot of suffering in this life. As Christians, we believe that's because sin marred and corrupted everything in this world. And that there is a lot of death and suffering in this world that is just wrong. And instead of eliminating all desire, what we want to do then is we want to eliminate bad desires or sinful desires. That's usually what we consider temptation. The answer isn't to eliminate all desire, to just kind of be this monk in seclusion, detached from the world, but to live according to the love of God. The Bible says that God so loved the world that he gave his only son. The Bible says God is love. The Bible calls us to love one another, to love your enemies. They will know you are my followers by the way you love one another. So we don't reduce and eliminate desire from our life and withhold ourselves. Instead, we lean in to the desire to glorify God in all things and to love our neighbor. And in that way, we are living according to the amazing love of God that we have seen displayed for us on the cross of Jesus Christ. And that is where he eliminated sin and death and the suffering of the world that has been overcome by the suffering and death of Jesus Christ. And so we don't follow the eightfold path, and we don't eliminate desire to erase suffering in this world. Instead, we trust in Jesus, who conquered sin and death, and who will restore all things to the perfect shalom in the new heavens and the new earth, while we love God and while we love our neighbors as ourselves.